We can't say the future without AI. I mean, there's no way around it. 50% of workers now believe AI is going to improve their experience. When I come into the meeting room, I need a way to incorporate my AI with what's going on in the meeting. It's almost a bring your own AI type of a concept. Most of what we do in our day-to-day is going to change significantly.
Hear the latest AV trends and predictions in this episode of Crestron's Smarter Spaces podcast on your preferred podcast platform.
One of the advantages of living in California my whole life before I moved to Massachusetts was that we did not have a basement. So now that I have a basement, it's completely filled with stuff, as George Carlin would call it.
That's all your house is. Think of it. That's all your house is. It's a place to keep your stuff. If you didn't have so much damn stuff, you wouldn't need a house. You could just walk around all the time.
Spring cleaning for your integration business, CEDIA's education programs for Expo, and how a deluge of streaming services has basically invented cable all over again. All this and more on ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 478, a place for my stuff.
Welcome to ResiWeek for April 8th, 2025. I'm Patrick Norton, guesting for Matt D. Scott. Joining me today on the show are Jason Knott, the former editor of CE Pro, now the data solutions architect and evangelist at D-Tools, the number one software for electronic systems contractors, and Mitchell Klein, VP of Business Strategy at CEDIA. And if you don't know what CEDIA is, people, I'm not sure how you found this podcast, but it's the Industry Association of Smart Home Professionals, aka the Custom Electronics Design and Installation Association. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, Patrick. Very nice to meet you. After all these years, we've not crossed paths, so it's good to spend some time with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We won't say anything about what an upgrade this is from Matt.
I was trying to keep Canadian-American aggressions out of the podcast, given that Matt can't defend himself. But I think
it's inevitable.
It will happen for the sheer unbridled joy of it. But getting started before I start teasing Matt in Canada, people and places I love, I want to ignore tariffs, right? Because, this is an ongoing series of disruptions. We don't have final, rates yet. We don't really know what's going on. People are charging tariffs. People are not charging tariffs. People are announcing repricing. I'm just going to shift our direction over towards CE Pro's editor's note. Does your integration business deserve a little spring cleaning? Where Arlen Schweiger gets into Swedish death cleaning for your warehouse and maybe your business strategy. And gentlemen, if you want to talk about tariffs or planning for them, not planning for them, reacting, not reacting, I leave it to you. Jason, how are you feeling about, what's your recommendation this spring for people that are looking at their business or their warehouse?
I highly recommend this. I wish that I could do a little spring cleaning here. One of the advantages of living in California my whole life before I moved to Massachusetts was that we did not have a basement. So now that I have a basement, it's completely filled with stuff, as George Carlin would call it, your stuff. Everybody's got their stuff. So this is a great topic. And the only reason I bring it up, D-Tools, complete shameless self-promotion. D-Tools did just launch an inventory management module for the software. I just spoke with an integrator a couple of weeks ago it was amazing. He said, I found thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment that I had on my shelves that I did not know that I had. And now because of that, I've got them into proposals and I've got them out to customers and, hopefully he'll be able to sell them. So I think it's something that, every integrator should do. I know Mitch can recall that, CEDIA tried years ago to do a work on something where integrators could resell equipment. And it's always been a struggle, I think, for that to get off the ground for the market. eBay versus eBay. I know Ian Moorish out at Together for Cinema in the UK is trying to launch something where integrators could resell stuff off their shelves, and then it would go to the charities that he does for building cinemas for critically ill children. So I highly recommend it, and I wish that if anybody's going to do any spring cleaning, come over to my house next.
Yeah, I kind of used to look at it, calling it digital produce, because the stuff goes bad pretty fast. How long can you sit with some of these items in your warehouse based on what you've paid for it and the overall value of what it is versus the replacement products? years later. So spring cleaning, you really got to do it every year. And I was just talking a little earlier with you, Patrick, I found my original Windows 95 discs. So if anyone needs them, just let me know. Just reach out to me. I'd be happy to get them to you.
I've usually got something ancient and technological within arm's reach, but sadly, there's nothing particularly outdated in reach at the moment, which probably means my cleaning is getting better in here. Do you feel that do most, do most, consumer or residential installers, do most of them carry a lot of inventory? Is this, I think it's completely dependent on the size of your business, but is it inventory the biggest challenge, or should people also take a moment to kind of step back and look at what their strategy is for the year? I also could think of, read the one thing, decide on what your strategy for the year should be, and then revisit that every 6 weeks. Is residential more organized than I may think it is sometimes?
Geez, I'm not sure I want to go down that rabbit hole.
That came out the wrong way.
So I would say a lot of inventory is oops inventory. Sure. Things that were bought for a project that for whatever reason the project has changed, or the product changed, or any number of things, the project was canceled. Mm-hmm. You're not a partner with Home Depot, so there are certain things you want to have on your truck, and there are definitely things you must have inventory of. And it's not necessarily based on dollars, but based on how much time will it save if you have it when you need it unplanned. And again, I'm not necessarily going to get into the details because that alone can be a very lengthy conversation. But I think the installers, the techs, you guys know what I'm referring to.
I think one area that would be really, really exciting if they could figure it out is, and Mitch knows, is the shade. When you're doing a motorized shade, that window is very specific down to eighths of an inch. And so if you mismeasure on a window, I know I talk to integrators all the time when they talk about what they've got collecting dust. It's a mismeasured shade, motorized shade in their warehouse. And I wish there was an easy solution for the industry as a whole to be able to dispose of those, or you reuse them, or find places for them. But I think if I could pinpoint one area that's probably problematic for a lot of integrators, is in the shade area.
Do people know how to tell you? There's Craigslist, there's Facebook Marketplace, there's eBay. Will reselling these as used run them afoul of their distributors or the manufacturers, or is it just nobody wants to deal with selling? Well, I guess in most cases they probably even can't be integrated into a consumer's home. Yeah,
and you have to be an authorized reseller. A lot of manufacturers you can't do that.
Okay,
but you're right. These shades I'm talking about are not used.
No, yeah.
They just didn't fit. And so I've heard from a lot of integrators where that is an issue, but it's a good question about if there's a way for them to find a place to, like I said, Ian Moorish of Together for Cinema is trying to do a thing where you could sell that equipment and then it would go to charity, and maybe there's some sort of a tax advantage there. I don't know.
Shifting gears a little bit, Mitch, what's the news on the education program, the changes that are coming up for CEDIA 2025?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a pretty significant change from the previous year. Some of it is going back to the good old days where we're bringing in more of the subject matter experts and the volunteers in terms of teaching the classes. But the actual content, the curriculum, is kind of 100% reviewed and gone over. We actually engaged with Amanda Wildman, who is an integrator out of Michigan, also a board member, to have her kind of working with our team in terms of coming up with these 4 distinct tracks that you've probably seen in CE Pro and residential systems. And, it's all been published there. But the key is that there's a lot of new content. For example, we have a full-blown lighting program. Lighting seems to be the bright, shiny object these days, pun intended. And so that's definitely something you're going to want to be interested in taking. We've got some really compelling courses by really smart lighting experts. But we're also looking into some future opportunities. We're going to talk about robotics in the home, for example. This is something that integrators need to be aware of and be prepared to own, and whether that's an actual robot or whether it's something like LEQ, which is more of a companion, that's definitely an important area. Another new thing we're looking into, believe it or not, is called smart kitchens, which is something that, again, we're going to be touching all aspects of the home. And we're looking at this concept of aging in place. And there are a lot of items within the kitchen that would be relevant to technology, from inductive cooktops and, major and small appliances that are all connecting up to the internet and doing weird things with it, or potentially weird things with it. So again, take a look at, we don't have enough time to go over everything that's in there, believe it or not. So this is the cool thing, is if you haven't been to the Expo in a year or two, or you haven't really looked over the curriculum, take some time and look it over this time. Project management as a fundamental within the curriculum as well. There's so many things to really talk about. So it's pretty exciting times.
I sat on the business education committee for 10 years at CEDIA, and I was thrilled beyond belief when several years ago it was exciting to me to see that the actual number of attendees that had gone to the business sessions, I should say, was higher than the technical sessions. Mitch highlighted a lot of the technical sessions, which are obviously super, super important. But I'll put a highlight out there for, he mentioned project management, just one of the areas on the business side that integrators really need to think about attending. And it's tough. They're competing against the bells and whistles on the expo floor. All the equipment's there. That's the gears. That's where the exciting stuff is. But, one of the values of going to CEDIA Expo and the CEDIA Tech Summits is the peer-to-peer communication that they get when they're sitting in a session next to another integrator and they're having the discussion about whatever the topic might be. I'll throw out there, Mitch, I hope that a lot of the sessions do involve other integrators and not just manufacturers talking to the audience, because I think that really is a helpful element to have more integrators involved in teaching the sessions as possible too.
Jason, that is absolutely a mission, and I'm 100% aligned with that statement. And yes, integrators will be doing most of the presentations and the delivery. And the other thing is that this is not one-off. So, we just launched a new learning management system, an online system, which is going to be tied in beautifully to the live events. So whatever sessions you may take at a tech summit, one coming up in New York in a couple of weeks, or whether it's at Expo, but there'll be pathways that whatever you've taken, there are next things. What's next will be available to you, whether it be in person or through the LMS. So again, really good instruction opportunities.
Is there any, as more and more younger integrators come into it, as technicians are starting their own businesses, do you gentlemen find that they have a different sort of business to tech focus? Has it changed much over the years? Some of them, I feel like there's still a pretty hard divide between, younger integrators I speak to who are very business and technology versus some that are super into the programming and the fancy devices and then figure out how to, make it a business and not a hobby later.
I can tell you, we're kind of deep in this at D-Tools, because D-Tools Cloud, which is our cloud version of the software, is really aimed at a lot of small integration companies. And I can tell you, there has been a huge influx of technicians or lead techs or whatever you want to call it, sales managers who have been working at existing integration companies who have launched their own businesses in the past year. So we are absolutely seeing that. So I think that they probably have the technical acumen, and it's the business side of it. Somebody said the other day, I said, well, when do they have to start thinking about having processes for their company? And the answer is as soon as they have one employee.
I was going to say, day one.
From what's inside of their brain to that other person has got to happen. So I think you're right, Patrick, that there is a definite need for these smaller integration companies and these technicians who we are seeing forming their own businesses and breaking out. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. And I don't know if it's because we're not hearing because they got laid off or anything like that. Sure. Every integrator is busy. It's just a lot of the times we ask why are they forming their own company, and a lot of times we hear it's because we think we can treat the customers better. So I think there's a customer satisfaction level that when an integrator gets a little bit too big and they start that maybe their processes break, their personal one-to-one communication with the customer when they're super small, starts to break down. So this is a cottage industry for the most part when you look at the size of the residential integration company, and it really shows.
Yeah, I agree. And I've had the pleasure of speaking with a number of integrators, a couple in particular that actually came in with MBAs in the background and that understand that to really be a successful integration company, you can't be doing all one-offs. In other words, you're doing one job, then you look for your next job, then you look for your next job, but ways to actually maintain long-term relationships with your customers by building real service capabilities. And we're definitely seeing that. And Jason, you and D-Tools, you got the detail. You see it. You see it before anyone else does.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's an exciting time for, it kind of branches into our next subject. I was talking about some sort of, ongoing service to help integrators or to help their customers, that integrators could build a recurring revenue stream. It's, somebody once told me that I talked about recurring revenue so much that when I die, my epitaph is not going to say RIP, it's going to say RMR.
Oh my gosh, we've had that conversation for eons, haven't we?
Yeah.
There are worse things, gentlemen, than consistent messaging. Shifting gears a little bit, CE Pro picked up on a survey from CouponCabin.com. The big title is New Data Suggests U.S. Consumers Aren't Completely Sold on Cutting the Cord in Favor of Streaming Services. That cable is back, if you will. I think this is a bit of an aggressive assumption based on the survey. But the idea is that, according to the survey, CouponCabin.com, who had a little over 3,000 respondents and almost no other additional information about the survey I could find on the website. But they're claiming that 22% of Americans who have cut the cord have returned to cable, and that 6% are considering this shift back. I would have liked if they'd had a question in there discussing whether or not you're enjoying your premium cable packages starting to look like broadcast television in 1995 or any of a number of larger cable channels around that time. I'm super frustrated by sports ball being inserted in between the top of the frame and scrolling down to the content I'm actually paying to see. But, this is the idea here that I think got people riled up is that, people are moving back to cable. And to put this in a larger context, depending on whose stats you're looking at, roughly 30%. I think cable hit roughly 100 million households in the United States when it peaked. In the aughts, it is down consistently it's down about 30%, whether you believe that number is 80 million households or 100 million households. The current numbers are about 30% smaller. 47% of Americans have canceled at least one streaming sub due to costs. 76% of the people surveyed, say the number of streaming services and the amount of content has become overwhelming. I will certainly say in the last 2 years, as every studio has started their own streaming channel, it has made finding what you want to watch a hot mess. How do you guys feel? How does this impact, the residential installer universe? Is it still a core problem to solve? Do you see this as a positive or a negative? How are you feeling about cable? Do either of you currently subscribe to cable television?
I'll be happy to start off with that one. And yes, I still pay for cable, which is perhaps a little strange, but I wanted to watch the latest Jack Reacher. Is that on HBO or is it Apple? Or maybe it was on Amazon Prime? Was it on Hulu? I mean, so, you want to watch the show and then, what is it? White Lotus. What is that on? That's really hot today. Is that on Prime? No. And so I remember doing this, maybe it was last year. I was on a panel at the Consumer Electronics Show. We talked about a bunch of things with streaming content. And there was a question from the audience. And the question was, with all of these, I think there were 7 or 8 streaming services that we were talking about at that time, to try and navigate around that, is there any kind of program or something you can subscribe to that has all of these in one? And I said, yeah, cable. So we're actually coming back to it. I can actually pick up my Comcast thing and say Jack Reacher, and it'll just kind of show up and tell me where to go and watch it. But I'm not saving any money.
I have an Apple TV, and it will actually do the same. I can hit the button on the side and ask for Jack Reacher, and it'll bring it up there too.
Yep.
But I'm also, it's funny, right? Because then it's, cable has all of those things, but just like streaming services, you have to add those on a la carte or pay a particularly massive number. Although I will say 7 or 8 streaming services at this point has gotten to be a pretty massive number.
A little much, yeah.
Jason, you're quiet in the background.
Well, I don't see the shift to cable necessarily as something that's advantageous for integrators. I know Dish for years. I have Dish. I've had the premium package for Dish for like 15 years, I think. Mm-hmm. And the reason Dish used to have an integrator-focused program, which they've gone away from just because I think they've had some financial troubles overall, is because the clientele that integrators serve are not people who are jumping around to services. They're not the guy who's dropping Comcast to go to something else because they're offering a jump deal, a deal to move from one cable supplier to another. So I don't think the move to cable is necessarily something that's a big deal for integrators. But I will say the confusion that you were talking about on the streaming side is a huge opportunity for integrators. To be able to pull together some sort of cohesive interface that an integrator can use to find all the different services. In fact, the keynoter at CEDIA Expo in 2022 is a guy named Greg Durkin and he talked at that time about what he thinks is consolidation is going to occur between like Starz, Peacock, Paramount Plus, Roku, that they all can't survive, and that there will be price pressures on Netflix and Disney Plus and Apple TV and Max and other ones, the ones that do survive. So I think, and again, there was a session at CEDIA last year that talked about the big driver of this confusion is the NFL. People want to watch every NFL game, and you don't know what channel it's on this week. It's on Amazon Prime this Thursday. Oh no, this one's on YouTube. This one's on CBS. This one's on ESPN. This one's on whatever. So I do think there's an opportunity for integrators to be that concierge, streaming service concierge for customers. But I don't know where the move to cable. I agree with you, Patrick. I kind of question that move back. I don't know if that's happening or not, but
no, it's about live sports, not just NFL. Sure. I'm from Boston. Obviously, I'm a Boston sports fan, and their games are played all over. And where are you going to watch the Celtics, or you want to watch any baseball games? I mean, let's face it, live sports is probably the one reason many people, myself included, continue to subscribe to cable, because I can get any live sports. And that's changing too, because now we're seeing Amazon getting into live sports and Netflix. I mean, so where's it all going?
I'm an odd duck in one hand, because I probably cut the cable the first time, about 20 years ago, came back to it for a couple of years and then sort of cut it and burned it, probably about almost 15 years ago now. Because of how I like to watch it, and also because I just have developed to the point where I have no tolerance for commercials. And anytime I'm in a place with cable or staying at a hotel, there's this moment where I'm like, oh God, there's commercials. No. But I'm also it's really lucky for me because I'm not a huge ESPN fan, and I don't watch a lot of sports ball, which made cutting the cord incredibly easy for me. It has been fascinating for me to watch friends over the years, starting with a friend who was just trying to watch Oakland A's games, and got into a whole life-changing relationship to geo-relocating himself, using a virtual LAN and other things to try to be able to watch the games he thought he would be able to watch when he got his MLB subscription. Right. I have a friend who's now chasing games at different bars because he's too frustrated with the fact that he has to, I think he figured out it was 3 different, channels one of which required a paid subscription if he was going to watch all of the NFL games for his team. I understand that they're trying to harvest more revenue from the fans, but wow, they are irritating people across so many sports at this point.
I love to tell the story. There was a builder that I went and visited, a developer that was building this multi-thousand home community in south of St. George, Utah, years ago, and they could not get the cable company to run fiber to the community because it was like 7 or 8 miles out of town, whatever.
Sure.
So this builder became a cable company. He put up one of those, the giant satellite company, basically, and created, none of this bundling baloney and all that kind of stuff. He created this giant menu of a la carte for these thousands of people who bought the homes in the community. And now he has got a recurring revenue stream as a builder. But the kicker in the story is, what do you think the number one channel was that was purchased by the homeowners?
ESPN?
The Playboy channel.
Yeah, I was going to say Playboy, yeah. Yep.
Playboy.
You've just encapsulated a perfect look at southern Utah outside of St. George. It's fascinating to watch how people try to solve these problems, right? The entire streaming environment has completely changed in the last 2 years. For me, the sort of defining tipping point was when Discovery bought Warner Brothers and then folded everything into Max, and then watching the sports become a bigger component of every other channel. It's a really weird echo of sort of major cable channels competing with broadcast channels back in the 90s to watch this history sort of repeat itself. Do you both feel that there's going to be a lot of shakedown in terms of streaming services?
Yeah, I kind of think so. But, if you're an integrator, you got to provide for potential for cable, obviously for a high capacity network streaming. And you're also putting up an aerial, the good old fashioned antenna on the roof to pick up some live broadcasts, because Lord knows, who knows where this is all going.
Yeah, I don't know where it's going to end up, but I would have liked to have known from that survey why people were going back to cable. Is it because of because of the confusion we just talked about, or is it price? Is it money, or is it both? I would love to know the reason why that move was supposedly taking place.
Yeah, prices are not going down. And you would think with all the competition, that's what you'd see is downward pressure. But they're all raising the prices. So it just doesn't add up.
No, but it's consistent across a lot of services and a lot of, different industries where they are consistently, your goods and services aren't getting any better. Your selection isn't getting any better. But somehow every X number of months, they just jump that cost up a little bit.
A dollar here, a dollar there, and before you know it, it's $20 over what you used to pay for.
Yeah, that's also I'm actually really curious because I get, it's odd watching Hulu and Disney sort of commingle. We ended up with a package with both Disney and Hulu, which means you now have all of your Hulu contents in your Disney channel, which makes this sort of curation of the Disney products, it just completely obliterates it, which led to some confusion with one of my children when they went to find whatever show they wanted to watch, and something that was not like the show they wanted to watch popped up. But nothing life-changing, nothing that required a big parental-child conversation. It's just they wanted to watch a cartoon, and this was live action, and they didn't understand. Yeah. But it's been interesting to watch streaming try to figure out how it can become as messy as a lot of the cable experiences back in the day. I don't know. I'm curious. I'm very curious to see, especially places like Paramount and Peacock, if they are going to end up, how the smaller services survive over the next couple of years. Because at one hand, I think they look at that as sort of an additional side sale on the revenue. In other places, they feel like they can sort of do minimal effort to support it. I would be fascinated to see what the costs were like on that to run an independent streaming channel.
My guess is that for the clientele that integrators serve, the price is a lesser concern. My guess is it's the confusion, It would be my guess as to why people are going back. And this Mitch said live sports. Those, I would bet, if there was a way to isolate the clientele that integrators serve out of that survey, that those would be the primary drivers versus price. But I could be wrong.
I would tend to agree with that, Jason.
Yeah, not going to argue on that. Might actually be a place where AI could help if it could actually sort it out. ChatGPT, where can I watch the Marlins play the Stingrays? I digress. We got to wrap up the show. We're about to run out of time in the virtual sense. Anything you want to share with folks about how things you're thinking about from your view of the industry and where they can learn more from you or follow you online? Mitch?
Yeah, I'm still holding off on the tariff conversation, but, I think one of the things we just talked about briefly before we went live here is prices never go down once they go up. And I don't know whether that's going to happen with the consumer electronics business, but as far as your integrator business is concerned, you need to make absolutely sure in any of your new contracts you're addressing this. CEDIA has put together some verbiage for you, which would help if you'd like to go to the CEDIA website and actually just copy and paste it into your contracts. Because again, prices, if they don't go back down and you're not covered, you're kind of screwed, man. So please do take that into account. And anyway, if you want to reach out to me directly, please do. You can get me either Klein, that's Klein, at cedia.org, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Mitchell Klein.
Thank you so much. Jason?
I'll reiterate what Mitch was saying in regards to, we just completed a year in review report for D-Tools, and one of the findings was 74% of the average signed contract in the residential space is equipment, and only 26% is labor. So if prices are going to go up on equipment, which it's not necessarily a bad thing, because that means you're able to sell some very expensive equipment, which in many cases, if you can sell a couple $100,000 projector, that's awesome. That's what skews that number versus where you see electricians and HVAC and those people at more at the 50-50 level, labor versus equipment. But I think that's something to keep our eyes on if we're going to see some spikes in pricing on the equipment, to see what that does to the labor percentage for integrators. And if, we were talking earlier about I don't want to say taking advantage of, but manufacturers who may not be affected by the tariff situation, but knowing that there's going to be a tolerance among customers for price increases right now because of that. So that'll be something for us to keep our eyes on. So in terms of contacting me, go to our D-Tools website, which is d-tools.com. You can reach me on all the social media platforms, Jason W. Knott.
Jason, thank you so much. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this week on ResiWeek. I hope everyone out there listening right now is not panicking in fear and tariffs. And if you are, take a deep breath, collect yourself, and remember, it's like a hailstorm. There's not a lot you can do about it until it's time to clean up. It'll be okay. I'm Patrick Norton. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Hello, this is Steve Greenblatt, host of AVNation's State of Control podcast. Each month, Rich Fregosa and I explore trending topics related to control programming and automation in the audiovisual industry. We speak with a variety of AV professionals who share their perspectives, knowledge, and experiences. Please join us for this monthly conversation. Check out A State of Control on avnation.tv or wherever you get your podcasts.